Online Darts here in Newcastle, the Newcastle Masters. Matt, looking forward to this one. Brilliant arena down there.
Yeah, it's full as well, which is always a good thing. I love playing in front of a crowd, so we're going to really enjoy tonight for sure.
We haven't seen you since your Super Series outing. How is the arm and everything? Was there a little bit of prep into this?
Well, this is the prep. So I'm planning to go back into the Super Series again in sort of the back end of July, and that will be the next time I've played since the last time I played, which was the Super Series. So it's kind of hit and miss at the moment in terms of when I'm going to be available, but I do have a plan, and I'm going to be revealing all that very soon, because as I spoke to you last time, I mentioned that when I went to Iceland and I won Iceland, and the support that I had out in Iceland kind of showed me that I have a bit of responsibility, because sort of the fan base that is sort of built up around what I'm doing with the YouTube. So I sort of felt an area of responsibility, and I've got something to repay that sort of faith and that sort of support that I've received. Nice,
and look forward to hearing that, but we're going to see Prime Time back on the stage.
That's the plan. That's the plan, if it goes to plan. But I'm mapping it out at the moment. We've got to roadmap this in, because I've got a lot of other commitments with media work, commentary, and various other avenues that I sort of work in now. So I've got to try and plan it out, but I think that I can get another couple of years. Well, originally I said maybe the end of next year, but since then, and from that interview actually, I got a contact from a guy who is a physiotherapist, who is a very highly qualified physiotherapist, who works with things like the England under 23s and various other avenues, and he can do all the therapies I'm already receiving and more. So he genuinely believes that he's going to be able to help me achieve my goal, and I certainly know I've got the ability to achieve the goal. So next year's going to be interesting.
So I'm guessing from that, and knowing that we've spoken before, that it's going to be more the WDF route.
Wow. You said it, not me. Let's put it that
way. See, I'm good at this poking little.
Yes. Always.
But obviously on that, going back to the Super Series, is there kind of a different pressure now? Because you go back into the playing arena, having criticised everyone with a microphone for the past couple of months or whatever, and now the boot's kind of on the other foot.
I don't see it that way. I go in there and I almost get more confidence from being in that position. And I sort of see that in the players as well. It's a little bit more timid sort of around you, because they know that you're going to be commentating on their games a few weeks later. So I tend to find that when we go into the practice rooms, it feels different. But it feels different in a good way. I've never enjoyed darts as much as I enjoy it now. And I was literally just chatting with the guys in the practice room there where I was having a throw. And they says, because I was throwing good darts on the board, and they went, "Do you really want to be a commentator? Look at the darts you're throwing." And I says, "No, but I throw darts now because I want to, not because I have to." I said, it's a big difference. And that makes me want to play more. And I just really enjoy it now. And that's a big part of darts. That's why I started playing. I started playing darts because it was fun. And when you start going up the rankings and you start getting into like the top 64, it's a job. It's not fun anymore. And I've found that fun side again. I've never been happier.
That's good. Good to hear.
Yeah.
First time we've spoken to you, World Cup, pairs only. First of all, how do you think it went down?
I've said this a few times. I've said this actually on the Sky Sports podcast as well, so it's not something that I said. When I first saw the World Cup, I thought it was horrible. I thought, this ain't a good event, it's very gimmicky, it's not going to take off, and this will be scrapped after 4 years, 5 years, whatever the original contract was. Now, I think it's one of the best events on the calendar. And certainly the last invention of the World Cup going pairs only, I thought it was brilliant. We saw upsets, we saw players that are very good in singles mode not transferring to the pairs, we saw players that have not been in good form in singles transferring very well to pairs. Look at Poland, fantastic example of somebody who sort of transferred into that pairs game very well. I think it's a great dynamic, it's a great standalone event on the calendar. People are saying, let's have more pairs. No, keep it for that event and keep it for something we can really look forward to every year.
Team Belgium on the opening night, I don't think I've ever seen anything quite so strange on an hockey. Obviously, there was an issue there, but the fact that we had a pair playing that made no eye contact, nothing with each other, and still won the game was a real dynamic I've never seen before.
But you enjoyed it?
100%.
Me too, as did most people with that. So I think that it was brilliant because we got to see so many different dynamics between those two, but then we saw it evolve throughout the tournament and sort of get more together, which was great because Belgium darts at the moment is such a booming scene that we kind of need the World Cup, which is their sort of flagship opportunity to really flagship Belgium darts, We look at local events in Belgium, we could play 900 players. This is what we saw develop in Holland, and then we saw develop in Germany. Belgium's next. So when it gets to the World Cup, it was bigger than Kim and Dimitri. It was about Belgium. And they realised that after that first game, which was great to see. But also, it was great to see that first game.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it before in my life, but it was great. The Welsh went there as the favourites. They weren't #1 seed because of the way it was done, but lived up to it. And the fact that you are on such a pairing and on the same team, that showed in big moments when they needed it.
I'm not surprised Wales won. I thought they'd win beforehand. They did. They dominated it. There was only really in danger, was it the semi-finals?
Yeah.
They had a bit of a close game. I said on the podcast, we had Johnny Clayton on it as well, so he had to sit and listen to my prediction. I said I think Wales are going to win this for about 10 to 12 years. And the reason is when I look forward, I can't see anyone that rivals them. When we look at the age of Johnny Clayton and Gerwyn Price, they're coming into their peak years, and they're probably going to be at that top end for quite some time. We look at other nations. We've got maybe one good player and a weaker player. They're not going to be able to beat Wales. And then we look at the top nations that are rivaling them. Scotland. Peter Wright and Gary Anderson aren't getting any younger. They're only going one way. And there's going to be a point where that performance comes down. Is that now? Potentially, because we're seeing Peter Wright's performance become very wavy. So are we now getting to a point where we're not going to see Peter Wright as consistent? We certainly haven't seen that from Gary Anderson. Yes, he's playing well right now, but how long does that last? So, and we say they're the biggest rivals at the moment to them. Team England's going to change a lot and flip-flop the partnership over the next couple of years. They'll find what is their right partnership. Northern Ireland, Josh Rock coming through, but is that going to be enough to really go and challenge the Welsh? I don't see a nation that can really stop them, and I think they're going to go on a Phil Taylor-esque run.
You touched on something there. The match play is on the horizon, and Gary Anderson is in that non-seed pool this year. How much of an absolute nightmare is that for those 16 seeds that one of them is going to get the rough end of the stick?
I speak to all the players, and from both sides of this, whether they say it here on the camera or they don't, they say it in there. And the players that are non-seeded will look across and go, I want that seed. You'll know who they are because you've heard the same conversations.
I've heard the same conversations, yeah.
And on the same aspect, the other side of things, the seeds will look over to the non-seeds and go, they don't look and go, I want that player. They go, I don't want him, him or him. And Gary Anderson is going to be first or second on that list, only rivaled by Josh Rock.
It just shows the match play. Look, I don't think it's the best match play lineup we've seen, but I think it's the most interesting in terms of a dynamic because of that issue that established players are on the other side this year.
I don't think it's in terms of reputation.
Yeah.
I think when we look at a lineup, we look at reputation, we go, right, which players have got the history and the reputation that's sort of going to carry this event as such. And when we look at the non-seeded pot, yeah, there's players in there that don't have that big time reputation, but there's players that really do, Gary Anderson. And when we say the match play, is it the best lineup ever? The one thing I always publicise the match players, and I talk about that, is this is the best players in the world over the 2-year ranking system, taking on the most informed players in the world based on the 1-year ranking system. By that element, it should always be the best match play ever, because every year the PDC is evolving and developing. So if we're going to say we've got the best from 2 years and 1 year, we should always have the best match play ever. Just it's not on reputation, but will it match up on numbers? On
Gary, we've seen him throw some astronomical numbers this year, almost what we call vintage Ando from 15, 16, 17 era. Do you think there's another TV title in there before he spawns off into the distance?
I don't think he likes the way I word it the same way. Vintage Gary, or Gary's rolling it back. I don't think he likes that, because I think he stands there and goes, I am Gary Anderson, I'm not a Gary Anderson tribute show. And I think that kind of spurs him on a little bit at times as well. But I would do exactly the same thing. I'd say vintage Gary Anderson. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him go and win one of these, or certainly go on a run. We've seen him go on a run to the final when he was playing terrible, lost to Dimitri Vandenberg. Yeah. And when we look at Gary Anderson now, the one thing that he's got is fear factor. Reputation carries you a long way. And when you go up against someone like Gary Anderson, it's hard to beat them. Yes, I beat Gary Anderson with a 170 finish.
Did you?
I don't know if I mentioned that. But what I don't mention about that story, which made it so good, is 2 days prior, I was 5-all with Gary Anderson. I wanted double 16 to win the match. I missed 3 darts at the double because in my head it was Gary Anderson, Gary Anderson. I'm going to beat Gary Anderson. I've got a chance to beat Gary Anderson. And that goes all the way through darts because we're all so romantic with the sport.
look, the way it's all panning out, it's going to be an exciting end to 2023, that's for sure. So many things on the line, big players defending money, so many TV tournaments. What are you looking forward to the most?
Seeing how it all unfolds in regards to, I think we're going to get change. Every sort of 3-4 years, because of how the ranking system works with the 2 years, we get a big change in the positions. And I think we're getting to that point now where we've seen people that have done well a couple of years ago defending big money. I'll touch on this because it's someone I'm very close with, Ryan Searle. He's going to be defending a position of the final of the Players' Championships. That's a big amount of money because Players' Championships not big jumps until you get to the very, very latter ends. So if he doesn't go and get to a semi-final final, we could see him come out of the top, we probably will see him come out of the top 16. And then he goes to the Worlds trying to defend big money as well. And there's a lot of people in that sort of position. And on the same aspect, there's a lot of people coming the other way. And again, I look at Josh Rock and think, he's not really defending anything. He could, with good runs in these majors, quite easily be in the top 16.
One on that is James Wade, that he's on the verge of dropping out of top 16 as we speak now, but provisionally world 27 or 28, I think, which seems unheard of for a man that has hibernated in the top 10 in the world for nearly 3 decades. Has James still got that desire to get back to being a top 10 player, or do you think this is the beginning and the end, the slide that we've seen from other players?
I reckon if you ask that question to James, you'd get quite an aggressive response. The reason being because I think he believes he is. Yeah, I genuinely think he can. But on the same aspect, I've heard conversations from James where he sort of doubts it a little bit and sort of almost talks about retirement. He spoke about it on camera many times about retirement. And I think the thing is, once you start thinking about retirement, it's already getting a bit too far down that line. And I don't know how long we've got James Wade for, so on that aspect, I think we've just got to enjoy James Wade like we should have enjoyed Adrian Lewis, rather than, let's say, analyse it, because when's Adrian Lewis coming back? Is he coming back? You know, is James Wade going to go down the same road? Is he going to take a break, and then once you take a break and you find life outside of darts, do you enjoy that to the point you don't come back? So James Wade, Gary Anderson, them sort of players, certainly enjoy them while they're here. On
Adrian Lewis, because you brought it up there, when's the cut-off, do you think, for Adrian? He's not going to lose his tour card this year.
Yeah.
However, next year is a different kettle of fish altogether. You've been in that position where you're defending money or knowing what you're defending, and you said, look, clean break.
Yep.
When's that line for Adrian Lewis that you think, if he comes back beforehand, he can pull it off, or is there a date that you think if he comes back afterwards, it's done?
If I was to work with Adrian Lewis personally, I would resign the tour card at the end of the year and I'd start again from fresh. Adrian Lewis isn't going to someone who struggle through Q school. He's going to get through it quite comfortably. I would, in Adrian Lewis' position, want to start from zero, start again, not defend, because when you defend, you look backwards. He needs to look forwards right now. And I think there's a lot more forwards for Adrian Lewis. But the problem is when you've been a 2-time world champion, you're always going to look back. You're going to look back to the glory days. Why can't I do that? The problem is that's safe. When he won those world championships, it was safe. Because he can stand here now and tell you anything you want about being the world champion. But if you was to stop that match in that World Championship and say, Adrian, how do you feel right now? I guarantee he wouldn't have been as confident as he'll tell you that he felt now, because it's safe. So when we look back, we look at that safety. And again, when we look at the rankings, the money's already on the board, it's safe. I think he needs a complete sort of overhaul. And yeah, it's the sort of player I'd love to work with, because I think we could get him winning again.
Matt, it's an absolute pleasure as always, buddy. We look forward to seeing you back at the Super Series.
Yes, couple of weeks.